Still, it's in just about everything, from the cars we drive, the architecture around us, and the buildings we work in every day.
London's skyline is dominated by steel, but its ubiquity belies the state of the UK steel industry. While global production has more than doubled over the past 4 decades, the amount the UK produces has actually halved. It now makes just 12 million of the 1.6 billion tonnes of steel made globally. It's a far cry from the start of the Industrial Revolution when Britain made 2/3 of the world's steel.
The sector has been pummeled further by the economic downturn. A near 30% drop in European steel demand has led to plant closures and job cuts. In the early 1970s, 200,000 people were employed in the UK steel industry. Today, around 20,000 jobs remain. Celsa is one of the 3 largest steelmakers left in the UK, alongside India's Tata Steel and Thailand-owned SSI. The Spanish-owned company employs around 700 people at its Castle Works plant in Cardiff, which it acquired in 2003 after the collapse of Allied Steel and Wire, a former steelmaker.
In the 28 years I've been in the industry since the mid-80s, I've seen the steel industry go from a relative prosperity to significant contraction in 2008, and we still haven't recovered from the levels of production output from that period. In addition to that, in spite of all of the significant millions of pounds of investment in the steel industry sector, it's still even more challenging to this day to produce a profit, and this is the ongoing battle for the steel industry in general.
UK steelmakers face high energy costs, driven up by green taxes that are higher than in other countries. According to the EEF, the association representing manufacturers, the government's estimates show that by 2020, the cost of climate policy will be about 50% higher in the UK than in the next closest country, Italy. These costs are already hitting Celsa, which has had to limit production during winter to avoid consuming energy at peak times.
I think that the UK steel producers are in a strong position. Okay? Internally, we all have done our homework, which is investing money in equipment and investing in people. So the only problem that we are facing is external to us, which is the pricing for energy and for electricity, okay, and these levies. So if the government just guarantees the similar conditions and a level playing field in terms of taxation of energy to the UK players than the ones that are having the German players or the French players, I do not have a doubt that the steel industry in the UK has many years to succeed.
After years of grim news, there are a few, albeit small, signs that the UK and European steel market is showing some signs of improving. A recent FT poll found that the European steel demand should rise by 2.4% this year, following years of weakness, which has helped raise hopes of a wider rebound.
Trade unions are optimistic this will lead to better profits for steelmakers and put an end to the massive job cuts that have hit the industry.
I think the workforce would clearly be concerned because they can see the state of the industry, but I think they would get some confidence back from the fact that companies are investing. I can't imagine that we could ever have a successful manufacturing base without a successful steel industry.
Despite some optimism within the industry, the UK steel sector faces tough challenges, with industry analysts warning that weak demand and overcapacity will continue to dog Europe's steel market.
People do ask if there should be a UK steel industry, and I think the honest answer is there is one. Would you rebuild it now? I think is the question. The answer is probably no. But if you go back to the context of how the industry was developed 50, even 100 years ago, the industry was built on raw materials, iron ore and coal, to serve a local market. The iron ore and coal has gone largely and the local market doesn't exist anymore. What you then have to do is to reshape your industry to your new market, and I think that is what has been happening in the UK and to a large extent Europe over the last 10, 20 years in terms of the reshaping, the resizing of both the employment and the tonnage in the industry.
Whether or not the UK will have a steel industry in 10 years' time remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the developed world, including the UK, has seen its relevance to the global steel market diminish drastically over the last 20 to 30 years. Tanya Powley, Financial Times, Cardiff.